Good afternoon, everybody. Christine Barconi here in the NBC4i Streaming Center. Our data journalist, Ben Orner, is joining us right now. You guys liked his appearance on election night so much, talking about the data and the numbers of the election. He's been working the past few days on a news story. Ben, tell us what it's all about, and then we'll show everybody on our website.
Yeah, so it's on our website right now. I've been going through a lot of the data, and I found that there's 3 counties that flipped from either Trump to Biden, or Trump to Biden, or Clinton to Trump. And those counties give us a nice representative idea of national trends. So the first 2 are ones that went for Clinton in 2016, Trump for 2020. These 2 counties are, what you'd consider this sort of Rust Belt, working class, union heavy part of Trump's base. Those are Lorain County, which is west of Cleveland, and then Mahoning County, which is Youngstown. And Trump did a lot of rallies in that area, that Mahoning Valley area, and it definitely paid off for him. So on this little story, you can click them, and
I can click on these right here.
Yep, and
okay.
then it'll flip, and you can see how the votes changed and how the margins changed. You can see that Lorain was just a slight Clinton win, and Trump was pretty easy to carry that. But Mahoning, going from more than 3 points for Clinton to 2 points for Trump is a big swing. You'll also see that I think with Lorain, nope, never mind. So if you go down to Montgomery County, which is Dayton, that went ever so slightly to Trump in 2016. That went for Biden in 2020. Pretty big. And I've talked to some Democrats in the Dayton area, and they're very pleased because I think the Dayton, that county had been reliably blue since the 80s, and they were happy to get it back. And what happened with these flip counties is that it's representative of how Trump did across Ohio and then across the nation. So Trump did really well getting out his base, chipping away more at those traditional union Democrats or independents, anyone in a sort of Rust Belt area. But what Joe Biden did was he did a great job of improving turnout in cities and also suburbs. So if you think about Montgomery County, Dayton, Kettering, that metro area.
And we can pull up the big map right here too.
Absolutely, yeah. So just put this together today.
So here's Montgomery.
Yep. And
whenever you talk to the Democrats in Montgomery County, what did they think, or what did they attribute this flip to?
I think you can the same answer for most most of these urban counties throughout the country is that Biden had an inclusive message, but also a lot of people are voting against Trump. And if you think about turnout, this was the highest turnout I think since like 1906 or more than 100 years.
Yeah.
Joe Biden got the most votes of any presidential candidate ever. Donald Trump got the second most votes of any presidential candidate ever.
So people just voted, period. Whether they were voting for Democrats or Republicans, they just voted.
People just voted. Either candidate was able to really increase turnout, whether you're voting for Biden, against Trump, for Trump, against Biden, whatever. People just voted. And the thing about the map at Ohio, and these results are unofficial. There's still like 300,000 ballots, provisional absentee, that still need to be counted. But Trump won by 8 points this year and in 2016. So if you go to the 2016 map, it's not going to look very different from the 2020 map. Even the counties that flipped, and I have this sort of spectrum of colors here to show the big wins. So these like Western Ohio counties like Putnam and Auglaize, Shelby, Darke County, Mercer.
This area.
Like that stayed red. It got a little redder, and then Columbus got a little bluer.
Columbus was very blue, especially this year.
Absolutely. Interestingly, Trump was able to chip away a couple percentage points on the margin, but this is for another story I'm working on later, is the precincts by precinct. What Biden had to do nationally and what he did nationally was improve in the suburbs. Get voters who could go either way. Maybe like a lot of independents, people who live between the cities and the rural areas. And in Franklin County, we have Columbus, but we also have Dublin, Hilliard, and in the maps that I'm working on right now, what I found is that Biden really, really did well in Hilliard and Dublin, those precincts going very blue. And if you look at Delaware County, which is probably
for 2016 or 2020.
For 2016. Go for 2016 for Delaware County. Pretty red.
Yeah.
Trump won by 16 points, and that's our biggest suburban county. If you go to 2020, Trump only won by 7. So even though that county stays reliably red, I mean, Biden chipping away 9 points from a large suburban county gives us an idea of where Joe Biden's strengths were in this election. And if we go to, I think, that New York Times map that I showed you.
Just a question, just a few anecdotal questions there, Ben, before we move on to the New York Times map, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
As far as population goes, how has Ohio been, over the past decade or so? Steadily increased, decreased, staying the same? Are you familiar? I'm not really.
I'm not familiar. I would assume that there are areas of the state that have lost population, but urban areas have increased.
That was kind of my question there, because I know many people your age and my age, maybe they're from these rural areas, or perhaps I'm formerly from the Rust Belt. I'm from the Ohio Valley, near the Mahoning Valley, kind of like what we were talking about as far as flipping seats. You have a lot of young people who might, go off to Ohio State or another Columbus University or another university, and then they stay in Columbus, or they come to Columbus to get a job that's more suited for their degree. So I'm wondering if Columbus becoming more blue and the surrounding states becoming more red, I'm wondering if that plays a factor into that, because younger people do tend to vote with the Democrats.
Yeah, I think you see a sort of divergence in where the bases are. It's been true for a long time that, the more rural you get, the redder you get, the more urban you get, the more blue. But what we definitely see here is rural areas getting more Republican, and then urban areas, even the suburban areas, getting bluer. And whether this trend will keep in 2024 and 2028, we don't know. This was these past 2 elections have just been these huge. There could be outliers considering candidates, but yeah, I think you could see a geographic polarization going forward, and Ohio seems to be one of those places where that could show.
And then the same thing anecdotally, as millennials start approaching our 30s at this point, mid-20s to really all the way up to 40, moving from the urban centers into the suburbs. So that also might play a factor, as well as millennials, again, do tend to vote with the Democrats. So something interesting there. All right, sorry, I just wanted to ask you a few questions there. Let's look at this New York Times map that we have
go
right
down, do a shift from 2016 there at the bottom.
At the bottom?
Yep. Right under the map.
Oh, got it. Yep.
So the New York Times put this together, and it shows leftward, rightward shifts of these areas. So Joe Biden won.
Let's make it full screen so people can see better. These arrows are kind of small.
Yeah.
When I say let's make it full screen, I will make it full screen. Okay, here we go.
So a few things. So you see, Biden really did well in the Northeast. Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island. These are reliably blue areas, but he really got turnout and margins. And then you go down to Pennsylvania and New Jersey. The one reason Biden won is because he did so well in the Philadelphia suburbs and the Lehigh Valley. But right through Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania was the deciding state. That's the state that got the tipping point. That's what got him the win. Right through like Pittsburgh is you see west of that, getting into Ohio, you start to see.
Then that's where I was saying that's the area I'm from.
Exactly, and that's the rightward shift. Youngstown going right, parts of central Ohio, rural Ohio, Cleveland going to the right, it's an impressive map. And you go farther west, so you'll see rural areas go right, and then urban and suburban areas go left. So
it's I'm right over Delaware County right now. 9.2 points more Democratic than in 2016.
Yep. That's what I was talking about earlier. Yeah. Really impressive. If you go over into Michigan, so we talk about these areas that really won it for Biden.
Michigan is a lot more blue than I anticipated it being, and I know these aren't like specific counties, but they are. Shifting areas.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So 2016 was this huge outlier that this blue wall that Democrats talk about, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, that had voted for decades for the Democrats, going red in 2016. And one of Joe Biden's biggest goals was to get that blue wall back. And he ended up doing that. And I think of those three states, the one that went the most for him was Michigan. And if you just go over Oakland County, Washtenaw County, Wayne County, which is Detroit. Wayne County improving.
Oh, you got to help me out. I'm not up on my Michigan county.
So
Detroit.
Sorry,
area?
I used to live in Michigan.
Okay, I can.
To the right.
I got Washtenaw. Washtenaw.
Washtenaw. That's where the University of Michigan is.
Oh, okay.
We have five and a half.
Unfortunately.
5.5 more points. I live near East Lansing, so it's
okay.
I have no skin in the game. So
what county is that? Oakland County?
Oakland County. These are huge suburban counties. 6 points. Livingston County, Macomb County. These are counties that in 2016 we talked about these suburban Detroit counties really did it for Trump, and now they come back and do it for Biden.
Interesting.
And then even so on the left side of the state, Kent County, which is Grand Rapids.
I see that.
Justin Amash. This independent who was a Republican. Western Michigan is a pretty reliably red area. They went, increased their turnout for Biden.
I'm seeing these big arrows at the top too. Antrim County, 15 points more Democratic. Trump still won handily in that area, but it's something interesting to see there. And based off of the votes, that's a tiny county.
Yeah, I think
they had less than.
Yeah, I think
16,000 votes for the entire county.
Yeah, I think those little things. Another goal of Joe Biden's was, get people on the edge, but also, there's, working class people, even though Trump did much better with working class, union type of people, Biden was still able to make, chip away a little bit here and there. And Michigan, he was able to, for whatever reason, get voters of so many different categories, I would say. In Michigan, and that's what won him. Michigan, at least.
Taking a look at Utah here, obviously we don't really pay too much attention to Utah generally, but these are some very big red arrows, and I know especially Salt Lake City is having a population boom for younger people.
Yes.
Right now, several people really moving out west and going to Salt Lake City. They looks like they're still sticking with the Republican trajectory. Oh my goodness, like if you would look at these numbers right now, a teeny tiny county looks like Huab County, perhaps, JUAB, 27 points more Republican. It's only a county where 5,600 people voted, but percentages are percentages.
Yeah, and I think that's proof of what Trump was able to do with his base. He ultimately lost, but if you think about folks who live in small counties, rural areas, in Ohio, he did a lot better.
Yeah.
And in Utah, it looks like this is the best representative state that Trump really.
But in neighboring Colorado, it's big time the opposite way.
Yeah, and I don't know my Western geography, but I would assume that Colorado and Utah have different cultures. Utah has been reliably red for I don't know how long, but Mitt Romney is one of their
evangelical base, definitely.
Yeah, the Mormons, and they tend to vote more conservative. But a few things. So, we talk about Biden did well in the cities. Cities like Milwaukee, definitely got him the vote totals that he needed. He made significant gains in suburbs. We saw it in Delaware County, suburban Detroit. And Donald Trump improved his base, these rural areas, even though it wasn't enough. One area that Donald Trump did incredibly well with, and there's going to be more reporting in the weeks and months to come. I want you to go hover over South Texas.
Okay. And while we're doing that, also, if you guys want to quit arguing in the comments there and ask Ben some questions based off the data, feel free, and he will do that for you. All right, South Texas, Starr County.
Starr County, Hidalgo County, Cameron County. These are, South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, mostly Hispanic,
interesting,
and Latino. Huge gains, and you saw that in South Texas. It's one reason why Biden made a lot of gains in, let's say, Houston and suburban Dallas, suburban Houston. Where Democrats were like, oh, maybe if things are good enough, we'll get Texas.
Another place to note where a lot of young people are moving.
Exactly.
Also, we want to note, so huge gains for Trump in these counties along the Rio Grande River. However, Joe Biden didn't win all 3 of those counties. But again, huge gains compared to 2016.
Yeah, and it's one reason why Texas was a hopeful long shot to maybe go blue.
Yeah.
The one thing that kept it from doing that.
What did it end up being? Because I know people were really hopeful.
Texas, I think.
And it was more blue than Ohio. So it was 52, 46 and a half. So.
Okay.
For Trump. So more blue than Ohio, which is super interesting. Something we were talking about a little bit earlier.
That is super interesting that Ohio, in 2 straight elections, 8-point victories for the Republican. And, Donald Trump is an unconventional Republican. He's a Republican who's able to tell these people in Rust Belt areas that, hey, the Democratic Party, maybe that's not the party for you working people. So we'll have to see who runs in 2024, whether it's Donald Trump again, someone of the same Trumpism kind of brand, or someone more conventional, maybe like I don't know who, but how Mitt Romney was maybe in 2012. But I think people are starting to see Ohio as a red state.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of data to back that up. Ohio was the bellwether county since 1964. This is the first election since 1960 that the winner of Ohio ended up not winning the presidency. And in a
when
world,
we use the term relevancy, we want to point out we're not siding with which side. It just means where ad dollars are spent, where campaigns will travel to, where the candidates will be giving speeches. That's what relevancy means. It doesn't mean it's irrelevant because it's a red state or it's irrelevant because it's a blue state. Right. It just means it is a solid red or blue state. So I just want to further explain what relevancy means.
And because the Electoral College candidates will spend ungodly amounts of money and time in half a dozen states where no Democrat's going to go to Salt Lake City because Utah's going to, because we don't have a popular vote system that, they're not going to win Utah, so they're going to stay out of Utah.
Or New York City.
Right. And you saw Joe Biden the day before the election, his sort of, candidates make this sort of last argument. They pick a city and they say an area that they think, this is the opportunity. Biden went to Cleveland and he still lost Ohio by a huge margin. So, maybe in 2024, when we'll have to see how demographics and things change in maybe 2022, those midterms. But in 2024, Ohio may not be as important to these campaigns because they, Democrats may see like, Ohio was pretty red. Texas was bluer, Georgia was bluer. Maybe we have more momentum and opportunity in those states, Arizona.
Certainly. So that's what relevancy means, guys. Exactly. It doesn't mean leaning one way or another. It just means where the candidates are going to be, where they're going to be spending the money. We do finally have a question here. Yes. Thank you so much. Got to scroll up for it too. So Holly is asking, who determines the data? That's an easy one.
Who determines the election results? Well, the people determine the data. Yeah. But so the New York Times, any sort of like election aggregator of data, this is straight from boards. County boards of elections. These are county boards of elections have some pretty sophisticated stuff where they put in the ballots, and these results come live from stuff. So
yeah, they are straight up numbers. There's
Yep.
no spin on these. These are just straight up numbers maps. And then, data journalists like Ben take a look at the numbers and see what these trends are. And that's how we, kind of can aggregate stories from them, right?
Yep, exactly. And the New York Times did a great job here of showing how many percentage points off of zero, gained or lost.
Certainly, yeah. So it's just numbers. They come straight from the county boards of elections based off of votes. That's it. Pretty simple. I think, Ben, that's probably one of the best perks of working with the numbers.
I can just rely on the government for data because they're not, it's just people vote and it goes to a machine and comes out to us. It's great.
Yeah. All right. So we have another map here. The 2020 presidential polls. Let's take a look at these.
Yeah. So we talk about polling. The averages. So one of the most popular ones was 538. If you look at them, they had their polling average was that Biden or Trump would win by like 0.8 points. It would be a real toss up. You saw a lot of articles on our website, on all these other websites that, Ohio's going to be a toss-up. It's looking like it's going to be a toss-up. Pollsters say it's going to be a toss-up. Trump has a slight lead. Ohio's going to be big. And it just ended up being an 8-point victory, and it really wasn't that suspenseful. There's a couple reasons for that. One is that, so in 2016, the biggest mistake the pollsters made was, and so you take a sample of people, and if you don't have enough people to be representative of people who ultimately vote, then you weight them. You make their responses bigger so you can get, a more accurate prediction of what's going to happen.
Is that fair?
Okay. Because it helps predict.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2016, what happened was that there weren't enough non-college educated people, working class people who, came out in droves for Trump in 2016. And so they tried to correct for that. They tried to, poll those people more, talk to more of them, weight it more, correct. And nationwide, we're still doing the postmortem, but there were some places where polling is pretty good. Some polling like Ohio where it was pretty off.
Where on here who was the most accurate with the Trump with an 8 point?
Yes.
I see a 5.2 or no. Well,
yeah. So we have the end date, the pollster, how many people, percentages, and then what I did, I highlighted so there's a thing called the margin of error. So you'll see a poll. So to explain to people, if you see a poll that has Trump 50%, Biden 50%, it's a tie. Well, it's not likely going to be a complete tie because there's a margin of error. So beside that result, you'll see a margin of error in a form of percentage points. So let's say Biden 50, Trump 50 with a 2-point margin of error. That means that if you do the poll again 100 times, in 95 of those times, the result will be within 2 points either direction of each candidate. So the way I have it illustrated here was with each poll, you have the result. So a research company, the last poll done in the state, tie ball game. Margin of error is 4.6, which means that the best result for Trump, let's say, would be Trump is 47 plus 4.6. Biden is 47 minus 4.6. So that is still, under that poll, that is still a possible outcome. So although this result was nowhere near an even split, that poll still found that there could be a Trump victory up to 9.2 points, and Trump won by 8.17. So
these guys seem to be the most
accurate?
Or
well, it depends because as a pollster, you try to you don't want to.
I think I'm trying to oversimplify it, and it's not.
Yeah,
simple.
no, and that's all right. It's polling is hard to understand, and I don't completely understand. I don't have a math degree or anything. But the way I tried to simplify it in here is that is to show the best Trump victory. And in green, it's one that that meets the 8.17 that he won by, and then the oranges are ones that didn't have him possibly getting the margin that he did. About 11 of these 24 gave Trump the possibility of the win that he ended up getting. So that's about half. I would think that, considering how off polls were again this year, that's not too bad. Okay. Half, if you read it as a margin of error, though, intuition would have you read it as, that sort of even split or whatever.
But did they used to be more correct? I feel like the past 2 presidential cycles, people are really hammering in on the fact that they're wrong. But did they used to be better? Is that I didn't really pay attention too closely before.
They were pretty good until 2016.
Okay.
Because Donald Trump was such a different candidate and was able to turn certain people out that, we keep coming back to these Rust Belt working class voters. And that's really what it was. So I mentioned in 2016 how the problem was that people without college degrees, people in Rust Belt areas, they weren't polled enough, and that's why the polls were wrong. Same thing here. They tried to account for it, but it's hard with Donald Trump being such an unconventional politician in the ways that he is a politician, but also in the ways that he's able to energize voters. It's something that polling hasn't really caught up to yet. I will say, if you want a best pollster or whatever, and I'm working on a story analyzing the polls, but Trafalgar Group, so you have a poll October 31st and then October 3rd at the bottom. They still had Trump winning by about 4 points each time, so he doubled that margin. But their polls with a small margin of error, so a margin of error that's under 3 is pretty good. You see some of these polls with 4, 6. One of them has like a 5-point margin of error. If you have a margin of error that's like under 3 points, that's pretty good. So Trafalgar had their 2 polls were about 2.9 margin of error, and they still got a result in which it was possible Trump would get a 9-10 point victory. Now Trafalgar, you see the asterisk. These were Trafalgar, I think, conducted these for a partisan organization. Their results tend to lean right.
However, when you do polls for partisan organizations, isn't it in your best interest to still do it correctly? Because you want the most accurate results, so you know how to strategize.
Absolutely. Trafalgar, and you can read up on this. They were one of the very few pollsters in 2016 who got it right. They got the electoral vote right.
Okay.
In 2016. They don't release. Here's the thing: they don't release a detailed explanation of their methods.
Okay.
And there's
Do you think that's for proprietary purposes? They don't want others to know?
They don't. From what I've read in interviews that they've done, is that they don't want someone stealing their methods. So
that makes sense.
But there's a lot of mainstream pollsters that criticize them because how are you getting Trump plus this many on all these polls? Well, disregard the methods for now, and just think, if you just think about the results. Trafalgar got 2016 right. They did one of the best jobs in Ohio of getting us right. Now in 2016, I think they predicted Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona. I'm pretty sure those 4 states, they predicted Trump wins in those states, so they were wrong. But if you look at just the results that they got, what I have here in 2016 and in 2020, Trafalgar was the best pollster, at least of Ohio. Now, depending on what the candidates are next time around, if you have a more traditional Republican running in 2024, then maybe a right-leaning pollster may not get such an accurate result because the candidates are different. I don't know. We're still doing the post-mortem, but there's things to think about.
So naturally people want to know about Pennsylvania and what's going on there and the margin of error and stuff. So I think the best place to look is at the New York Times map. You want to go back to that?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
All right.
All right. So we'll go to the winners map right here and zoom in on that. So what can you tell us about, it was called Saturday morning by all of the major media outlets, AP, NBC News, Fox News, all of them called it roughly around the same time. What did they see to make that call?
So it's a little different for everyone. That's why everyone makes different calls.
Certainly.
But broadly, I think they see that they can say with 99.5% certainty that this candidate will win. That's why, you see in in like Indiana, which is a very reliably red county, you can call that with like a few counties in,
right.
You'll watch CNN or something, and polls have closed in Idaho. We can now call Idaho,
right? Or they can call the state of New York,
Democrat,
or Massachusetts,
like
or
a Republican's
like
not going to win California, a Democrat's not going to win Idaho, but Pennsylvania being a swing state, and it took so long for, I would say, a couple reasons. One,
they couldn't open their ballots like we
exactly
could here in Ohio.
The Republican legislature said that mail-in ballots could not be counted days before. You had to wait until Election Day. In Ohio, one reason we got results so soon and were able to make a call so soon is that they've been counting early votes and mail-in ballots.
And right, so the big number dump at the beginning, we saw a huge lead for Biden, and we were always extraordinarily careful whenever we said, Biden's got a large lead after that first dump, because we know that the president had been encouraging Republicans to vote in person for months and months leading up to the election. On top of that, it's Democrats who usually do vote absentee, early, and by mail. So that is why Biden had a huge lead in Ohio in the beginning, but then the president very quickly chipped away at that and then came out on top by 8 points. Now, the opposite happened in Pennsylvania.
Yep, in Pennsylvania, Georgia, these states that the president is currently claiming that there was widespread election fraud, that they found all these ballots that cost me election, that gave Biden a huge lead. They didn't find them. People voted. They were just sitting there, but couldn't be counted until after like all these Republicans voted on Election Day. So, from the outside, it looks like, hey, how come Joe Biden's, he's now pulled ahead? How, what's up with this? Well, it's just because they were counted last. There's no, I have seen no evidence, and I don't know any serious journalist who has seen any evidence of widespread voter fraud in the country. There have been, little things here and there, but nothing, absolutely nothing that could swing the election back to the president.
Certainly. So yeah, it's not all that complicated to understand why the vast majority of these mail-in ballots that they had to open and they had to wait, they went to court. They wanted to open them early, but they were not able to by law, and so it took days. And I'm not sure if did you see 60 Minutes over the weekend? Their Republican commissioner.
Oh yeah.
He said, I warned you guys. He said there's nothing wrong going on here. He said this is a bipartisan process. You see the tables, you've got one Democrat and one Republican sitting at each table. I'm walking through, my Democratic counterparts are walking through, keeping an eye on everything. And so the Republican there in Pennsylvania, the commissioner, really doubling down on 60 Minutes this weekend. He said all along that it would take days if the state legislature would not let them open these mail-in ballots early, and that is exactly what happened.
Yep.
So for those of you who are asking about Pennsylvania, it is what it is. That and is an explanation for you on the math.
And one reason why you turn on the TV and they're all like, everyone's talking about these mail-in ballots that are coming in from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and the big suburbs. It's just because there a lot of people are voting there. So these central Pennsylvania counties that are really red, they don't have a lot of people, so they were able to count their mail-in ballots a lot sooner than a Philadelphia, which has millions of people. So.
All right, Ben, thank you so much. Very interesting. I think we touched on it all. We had plenty of commenters, but not too many questions, unfortunately. But maybe they'll leave some comments down below, and we can go through and answer some with a written response or drop them a link or something like